What if I told you that the food on your table today might not be there tomorrow? Think about the last time you went to the store and couldn't find what you needed. Empty shelves, high prices, long delays. It's not just you. Supply chains are breaking, climate change is causing more disasters, and shipping routes are getting slower and less reliable. These aren't just news stories, they're warning signs, and most people are completely unprepared. If you don't have a plan for what to eat when things go wrong, you're putting your family at risk. In this video, you'll learn exactly what foods to stockpile so you can survive any crisis, from short blackouts to long-term disasters. We'll show you the essential items most people forget, how much you really need, and why some common foods are a waste of space. This isn't about panic buying, it's about smart planning. If you want to protect your family and stay strong when others are struggling, keep watching. What you learn next could save your life. Let's start with number 1, pasta. Pasta is a staple in millions of homes, but it might not stay that way for long. Climate change is hitting hard, especially in key wheat-growing regions like Italy, the US, and Canada. Droughts, extreme heat, and unpredictable weather are lowering crop yields. In 2023, Italy, one of the world's top pasta producers, saw a wheat drop of over 30% due to dry conditions. Farmers are speaking out. One Italian grower said, "We're harvesting less than half of what we used to. If this keeps up, pasta will become a luxury." Supply chain problems are making things worse. Shipping delays, rising fuel costs, and labor shortages mean even less pasta on store shelves. Prices have already jumped nearly 20% in the last 2 years, and experts predict they could double within the next 5 if conditions don't improve. If you rely on pasta as a regular part of your meals, now is the time to start stockpiling. Buy extra when it's on sale. Store it in sealed containers with oxygen absorbers to keep it fresh for years. Avoid flavored or colored pastas. They spoil faster. Stick to basic durum wheat varieties, but don't put all your eggs in one basket. Consider alternatives like rice, oats, or canned potatoes. For long-term storage, look into wheat berries or cornmeal. Both can be ground into flour when needed. Pasta may still be on the shelf today, but tomorrow? That's not guaranteed. Be ready before it's too late. 2. Whole grains. You probably think of whole grains as a healthy choice, but more people are starting to see them as a survival necessity. Unfortunately, they're becoming harder to find and more expensive. Why? Climate change is hitting major grain-producing areas hard. In the U.S. Midwest and Canadian prairies, extreme heat and drought have cut wheat yields by up to 25% in recent years. Flooding in parts of Europe has also disrupted barley and rye production. Supply chain issues are making things worse. Shipping delays and fuel costs are pushing prices higher. A 50-pound bag of wheat that cost $10 a few years ago now sells for over $18 in many places. Experts say prices could rise another 40 to 50% within the next 3 to 5 years if conditions don't improve. Farmers are sounding the alarm. One Nebraska wheat grower said, "We're seeing weather we've never seen before. Some fields are total losses. If you need grain, buy it now. It won't be here tomorrow. If you're prepping, start buying whole grains like wheat berries, barley, and oats in bulk. Store them in sealed buckets with oxygen absorbers to keep them fresh for up to 30 years. You'll also need a grain mill to turn them into flour when needed. If supplies run low, look for alternatives like corn, buckwheat, bamai, or sorghum. These aren't as common, but they store well and can be used in many recipes. Don't wait until it's too late. Stock up while you still can." 3. Rice. Rice is a staple food for more than half the world's population, but it's becoming harder to count on. Climate change is hitting rice-growing regions hard in Asia. Rising temperatures and irregular monsoon rains are lowering yields. Vietnam and India, 2 of the biggest rice exporters, have both seen sharp drops in recent years. In 2023, India banned some rice exports due to falling crop levels, sending shockwaves through global markets. Prices are already climbing. Since 2020, the cost of basmati rice has gone up over 30%, and non-basmati rice prices hit a 15-year high. Experts warn that if droughts and heat waves continue, prices could double within the next few years. A farmer in Thailand said, "We used to get 4 good harvests a year. Now we're lucky to get 2. The water just isn't there anymore." For preppers, now is the time to buy. Focus on long grain brown rice or white rice packed in oxygen-free containers. White rice stores better, up to 30 years if sealed properly. Avoid quick cook or flavored rice mixes. they spoil faster. Next up is at number 4, breakfast cereal. You might not think of breakfast cereal as a survival food, but for families with kids, it's a comfort item that can help keep morale up during stressful times. However, cereal is becoming harder to find and more expensive. Why? Because it's made from grains like corn, wheat, and oats, all of which are being hit by climate change and poor harvests. In 2023, U.S. corn production dropped by nearly 10% due to droughts and high temperatures. That affects everything from boxed cereals to granola bars. Supply chain issues are also causing problems. Shipping delays and ingredient shortages have slowed down production. Major cereal brands like General Mills and Kellogg's have both reported lower output and rising costs. Prices have already gone up. A typical box of cereal now costs 25% more than it did 2 years ago. Experts predict prices could rise another 40% in the next few years if grain supplies continue to drop. One plant manager at a cereal factory said, "We're getting ingredients late or not at all. We're running machines slower just to make sure we don't run out." If you want to stock up, buy basic non-sugary cereals like Cheerios, cornflakes, or plain oatmeal. These store better and last longer than sugary or frosted kinds. Seal them in Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers to keep them fresh for several years. If cereal becomes too expensive or rare, consider alternatives like homemade oatmeal, grits, or even powdered eggs with toast for a filling breakfast. Don't wait until it's gone. Start adding this important comfort food to your emergency supply now. Number 5. Beans. Beans are one of the best sources of plant-based protein and a must-have in any emergency food supply, but they're not as easy to get as they used to be. Climate change is hurting bean crops around the world. Beans need steady rain and moderate temperatures to grow well, but in major growing areas like North and Central America, droughts and extreme heat have cut yields. In 2022, U.S. dry bean production dropped by over 20% due to water shortages in states like Nebraska and North Dakota. Supply chain issues are making things worse. Shipping delays and labor shortages mean fewer beans reaching stores. Some brands have even reduced bag sizes without lowering prices. A quiet way of raising costs. Prices have spiked. A pound of dried pinto beans now costs nearly 50% more than it did 3 years ago. Experts warn that if conditions don't improve, prices could rise another 30 to 40% in the next few years. One farmer from Idaho said, "We can't keep up with demand. If we don't get enough rain next season, there won't be enough beans for anyone." For preppers, now is the time to buy. Stock up on pinto, black, kidney, and navy beans. Store them in sealed buckets with oxygen absorbers. They can last up to 30 years when stored right. If beans become too expensive or hard to find, lentils, split peas, or canned chickpeas are good alternatives. They store well and offer similar nutrition. Don't wait until it's too late. Beans are a survival staple you can't afford to run out of. Number 6, canned meat. When the power goes out and the fridge stops working, fresh meat won't last long. That's why canned meat is a survival essential, but it's becoming harder to find and more expensive. Why? Because meat production is being hit by rising feed costs, droughts, and supply chain breakdowns. Cattle ranchers are dealing with fewer animals due to high feed prices and dry pastures. In 2023, beef production in the U.S. dropped to its lowest level in over 50 years. Canned meats like chicken, tuna, Spam, and corned beef are feeling the pressure. Prices have gone up nearly 35% since 2021. Experts warn that if feed shortages continue, prices could rise even more in the next few years. One Texas rancher said, "We're feeding our cattle the same way we always have, but the cost has doubled. We can't keep selling at the same price. Something's got to give." For preppers, now is the time to stock up. Buy store-brand canned chicken and tuna when they're on sale. Spam and corned beef may not be gourmet, but they store for years and are packed with protein. Store them in a cool, dry place and rotate your supply as needed. If canned meat becomes too expensive or scarce, look into dried jerky, summer sausage, or canned fish like sardines and mackerel. These are compact, rich in protein, and store well. Don't wait until it's gone. Start adding canned meat to your emergency food supply today. Number 7, beef or turkey. Jerky is one of the oldest forms of preserved meat, and for good reason. It's lightweight, packed with protein, and stores for years without refrigeration. But even this survival staple is getting harder to find and more expensive. Why? Because meat prices are rising and production is slowing down, droughts have reduced cattle herds, and feed costs have gone have gone through the roof. In 2023, U.S. beef production dropped to its lowest point in decades. That means less meat for jerky and higher prices for what's left. Store-bought jerky has already gone up by over 25% in the last 2 years. And if you make your own, the cost of raw meat has jumped just as much. One rancher in Montana said, "We're raising fewer cattle because we can't afford to feed them. If things don't change, jerky will go from a snack to a luxury item." For preppers, now is the time to stock up. Buy in bulk when it's on sale, or make your own. Trim all fat, salt heavily, and dry thoroughly for long-term storage. Vacuum-sealed jerky can last up to 1 to 2 years in a cool, dark place. If store-bought jerky becomes too expensive, look into making your own from deer, elk, or turkey, or try dried fish or canned meats like Spam as alternatives. Don't wait until it's gone. Start adding jerky to your emergency food supply now. Number 8. Summer sausage. Summer sausage might not be your everyday snack, but in a survival situation, it's one of the best long-term food options you can have. It's packed with protein, doesn't need refrigeration, and can last for years when sealed properly. So why is it becoming harder to find and more expensive? The problem starts at the farm. Rising feed costs, droughts, and supply chain issues are hitting meat producers hard. Pork and beef prices have gone up sharply over the last few years. 2023 alone, pork production dropped by nearly 8% in the U.S. due to high farming costs and disease outbreaks. Because summer sausage is made from cured meats like pork and beef, it's feeling the same price pressures. Store-bought vacuum-sealed summer sausage has gone up by around 30% since 2021. And experts say the trend isn't slowing down. If anything, it's getting worse. A Wisconsin meat processor said, "We're paying more for every part of this, the meat, the spices, even the packaging. We're trying to keep up, but we can't absorb these costs forever." For preppers, now is the time to stock up. Look for vacuum-packed or freeze-dried summer sausage when it's on sale. Store it in a cool, dark place and rotate your supply as needed. If summer sausage becomes too rare or expensive, try alternatives like pepperoni sticks, jerky, or canned meats such as Spam or Vienna sausages. These also store well and offer similar nutrition. Don't wait until it's gone. Add summer sausage to your emergency food stash while you still can. Number 9. Cheese might not be the first thing you think of for emergency storage, but when stored correctly, it can last for years without refrigeration. Hard cheeses like cheddar, Parmesan, and Gouda are ideal for long-term food storage, especially when sealed in wax or vacuum-packed. So why is cheese becoming harder to find and more expensive? Dairy farms are facing rising costs. Feed prices have spiked, water shortages are growing, and extreme weather is hitting milk production. In 2023, U.S. dairy farmers reported a drop in milk output due to record heat waves that stressed cows and lowered milk yields. Processing and packaging costs have also gone up. As a result, cheese prices have jumped nearly 40% since 2021. Experts warn that if conditions don't improve, prices could keep climbing, and supply may shrink even further. One Wisconsin dairy farmer said, "We're feeding cows the same way we always have, but everything costs more now, and we're barely breaking even." For preppers, now is the time to stock up on hard cheeses. Buy blocks of cheddar or canned shelf-stable cheese when on sale. For long-term storage, use the triple wax dipping method to seal out air and moisture. Properly stored, cheese can last 10 to 15 years. If real cheese becomes too rare or expensive, look into powdered cheese or canned meat and nuts as alternative protein sources. Don't wait until it's gone. Start adding cheese to your emergency food supply today. Number 10, canned vegetables and fruit. Fresh produce won't last when the power goes out. That's why canned vegetables and fruit are a must-have in any emergency food stockpile. They provide essential vitamins, fiber, and flavor without needing refrigeration. But even these basics are getting harder to find and more expensive. Why? Because climate change is hitting crop production hard. In 2023, extreme heat and droughts across California, one of the largest vegetable-producing states, caused major losses. Farmers reported up to 40% drops in yield for crops like tomatoes, green beans, and peas. At the same time, rising fuel and labor costs are making it more expensive to grow, harvest, and can these foods. Prices for canned goods have gone up by around 25% since 2021, and experts say they could rise even more if weather patterns keep hurting harvests. One California farmer said, We're getting less from every acre. The water just isn't there anymore. If this keeps going, we'll have to cut back even more next year. For preppers, now is the time to buy. Focus on nutrient-rich options like green beans, carrots, peaches, and pineapple. Store them in a cool, dry place and rotate your supply as needed. If canned fruits and veggies become too scarce or costly, look into dried fruits and dehydrated vegetables as alternatives. They store well and can be rehydrated when needed. Don't wait until it's too late. Start adding canned produce to your emergency stash today. Number 11, powdered milk. When fresh milk is no longer an option, powdered milk becomes a lifeline, especially for families with children. It's compact to stores for years and provides essential nutrients like calcium and protein, but even this basic survival item is becoming harder to find and more expensive. Why? Because dairy production is under pressure. Rising feed costs, extreme weather, and fewer dairy farms are all contributing to lower milk output. In 2023, U.S. milk production dropped to its lowest level in over a decade. Farms are struggling with heat-stressed cows and rising operational costs. Processing and packaging powdered milk also takes energy, and with fuel prices still high, manufacturers are passing those costs on to consumers. Powdered milk prices have gone up nearly 30% since 2021, and experts warn they could climb even higher if supply keeps shrinking. One dairy co-op manager said, "We're producing less milk than we used to, and processing it is getting more expensive. At some point, something has to give." For preppers, now is the time to stock up. Buy non-fat dry milk in bulk when it's on sale. Store it in Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers to keep it fresh for up to 20 years. If powdered milk becomes too rare or costly, consider alternatives like canned evaporated milk or powdered plant-based milks, though they don't store quite as long. Don't wait until it's gone. Add powdered milk to your emergency food supply now. Number 12, spaghetti sauce. Spaghetti sauce might seem like a simple pantry item, but in a crisis, it can turn basic staples like pasta and rice into real meals. It's calorie-dense, rich in flavor, and easy to store. So why is it becoming harder to find and more expensive? The problem starts in the fields. Most spaghetti sauce is made from tomatoes, and tomato crops are under pressure. In 2023, California, which produces nearly 90% of U.S. processed tomatoes, faced one of its worst harvests in years. Extreme heat and water shortages led to a drop in production of over 20%. At the same time, fuel and labor costs have gone up, making it more expensive to process and ship tomato products. As a result, jars of spaghetti sauce have gone up by around 25% since 2021, and prices are expected to keep rising. One California tomato processor said, "We're getting fewer tons per acre than ever before. If we don't get enough rain next season, things could get really tight." For preppers, now is the time to stock up. Buy large cans or jugs of spaghetti sauce when on sale. Store in a cool, dry place and rotate your supply every couple of years. If spaghetti sauce becomes too rare or expensive, look into canned tomato paste or crushed tomatoes. Both can be used to make your own sauce. Don't wait until it's gone. Start adding spaghetti sauce to your emergency food stash today. Number 13, soup. Soup might not seem like a survival essential, but in an emergency, it can be one of the most versatile and valuable foods you have. It's calorie-rich, easy to prepare without power, and can be made from simple ingredients. But even this basic comfort food is getting harder to find and more expensive. Why? Because soup production relies heavily on stable supply chains and consistent crop yields, both of which are under threat. Droughts, extreme weather, and rising farming costs are hitting key ingredients like wheat, barley, potatoes, and vegetables used in canned soups. In 2023, vegetable shortages led to reduced soup production across major U.S. brands. One soup company reported a 15% drop in output due to lack of raw materials. At the same time, fuel and packaging costs have gone up, pushing prices higher for consumers. A food industry analyst said, "If you're seeing fewer soup options on shelves, it's not just your imagination. The whole system is under pressure." Prices for canned soups have gone up nearly 20% since 2021. Experts warn that if ingredient shortages continue, they could rise even more in the coming years. For preppers, now is the time to stock up. Look for shelf-stable or canned soups like cream of mushroom, tomato, or chicken noodle. Store them in a cool, dry place and rotate your supply regularly. If canned soup becomes too scarce or costly, consider powdered soup mixes or bulk ingredients like dried mushrooms, onions, and bouillon, which you can use to make your own from scratch. Don't wait until it's gone. Add soup to your emergency food stash today. Number 14, Bouillon when you're cooking in a crisis. Bouillon, whether in cubes, granules, or powder form, is one of the best ways to add flavor and nutrition to meals. It turns simple grains, beans, and water into hearty, satisfying dishes. But even this essential kitchen staple is becoming harder to find and more expensive. Why? Because production depends on stable meat processing and global supply chains, both of which are under pressure. Beef and chicken stocks come from slaughterhouses, which have been hit by rising feed costs, labor shortages, and plant closures. In 2023, U.S. beef production dropped to its lowest level in decades, directly affecting the availability of beef bouillon. Packaging and shipping costs have also gone up. As a result, store-bought bouillon products have risen in price by over 25% since 2021. Experts warn that if meat supplies keep shrinking, prices could go even higher. A food manufacturer in Texas said, "We're paying more for raw materials, energy, and transport. We've had to raise our prices just to stay open. For preppers, now is the time to stock up. Buy dry bouillon powder or cubes in bulk when on sale. Store in airtight containers away from heat and moisture. It can last up to 10 years or more. If commercial bouillon becomes too rare or expensive, look into making your own dried broth powders at home using dehydrated vegetables, salt, and spices. Don't wait until it's gone. Start adding bouillon to your emergency food stash today." Number 15, sugar. You might not think of sugar as a survival food, but in an emergency, it's more than just a sweetener. It's essential for energy, food preservation, and even medical uses. So why is sugar becoming harder to find and more expensive? Because sugar production around the world is under pressure from extreme weather and supply chain issues. In 2023, major sugar-producing countries like India and Thailand saw sharp drops in output due to severe flooding and droughts. India, one of the largest sugar exporters, reported a 12% drop in production after monsoon rains came late and unevenly. At the same time, fuel and transportation costs have gone up, making it more expensive to process and ship sugar worldwide. Prices have risen by over 40% since 2021, and experts predict they could keep climbing if climate disruptions continue. A Louisiana sugarcane farmer said, "We used to get 2 good harvests a year. Now we're lucky to get 1. If the weather keeps changing like this, we won't be able to keep up." For preppers, now is the time to stock up. Buy pure white granulated sugar in bulk when possible. Store it in airtight containers to keep it dry and usable for years. If regular sugar becomes too rare or expensive, look into alternatives like honey, molasses, or even stevia, though they don't preserve food like real sugar does. Don't wait until it's gone. Add sugar to your emergency food stash today. Number 16, honey. Honey isn't just a sweetener. It's one of the most powerful survival foods you can stockpile. It never spoils, has natural antibacterial properties, and provides long-lasting energy. Ancient honey found in Egyptian tombs was still edible. That's how durable it is. But even this timeless food is becoming harder to find and more expensive. Why? Because bee populations are declining, and climate change is making honey production harder. Extreme weather, pesticide use, and habitat loss have all led to fewer healthy bee colonies. In 2023, U.S. honey production dropped by over 15% compared to the previous decade, while demand continues to rise. At the same time, rising fuel and packaging costs are pushing up prices. A jar of raw honey now costs nearly 50% more than it did 5 years ago. Experts warn that if bee health doesn't improve, real honey could become a luxury item. Or worse, be replaced by fake or mixed versions. A beekeeper from Georgia said, "We're losing hives faster than we can replace them. If this keeps up, real honey will be rare and very expensive." For preppers, now is the time to buy real, raw honey in bulk. Store it in sealed glass jars in a cool, dry place. It will last indefinitely. If real honey becomes too scarce or costly, look into alternatives like molasses or sugar, though they don't offer the same medicinal benefits. Don't wait until it's gone. Start adding real honey to your emergency stash today. Number 17, salt. Salt is more than just a seasoning. It's one of the most essential survival items you can stockpile. It preserves food, aids in medical care, and even helps with water purification. Without salt, long-term survival becomes much harder. But even this ancient basic mineral is becoming harder to access and more expensive. Why? Because salt production depends on stable supply chains and energy sources. While salt itself is abundant, processing and packaging costs have gone up due to rising fuel and transportation prices. In 2023, shortages of refined salt were reported in parts of the US and Europe due to plant shutdowns and shipping delays. At the same time, demand for specialty salts like sea salt and Himalayan pink salt has spiked, driving up prices even more. Store-bought iodized salt has gone up nearly 20% since 2021, and experts warn that if supply issues continue, shortages could become more common. A salt refinery worker said, "We're producing as much as we can, but shipping delays and rising costs are making it harder to keep shelves stocked. For preppers, now is the time to buy. Purchase bulk quantities of non-iodized salt, like pickling or kosher salt when possible. Store it in airtight containers. Salt doesn't go bad, but it can absorb moisture if not protected. If regular salt becomes too rare or expensive, look into alternatives like sea salt, rock salt, or even salt from old survival kits. Just make sure it's clean and uncontaminated. Don't wait until it's gone. Add real salt to your emergency stash today." Number 18, spices. When times get tough, spices might seem like a luxury, but they're actually a survival necessity. They add flavor to basic meals, help preserve food naturally, and can even have medicinal uses. But here's the problem. Spice supplies are getting tighter and prices are rising faster than most people realize. Why? Because global supply chains are still recovering from pandemic disruptions, and climate change is hitting crop yields. Many spices like pepper, cinnamon, and chili come from regions in Asia, Africa, and South America that are facing extreme weather, labor shortages, and shipping delays. In 2023, India, one of the world's top spice producers, reported a 15 to 20% drop in chili production due to irregular monsoons. Black pepper prices also jumped by over 30% due to poor harvests in Vietnam and Indonesia. A spice trader from Kerala, India, said, "We've never seen such unstable growing conditions. Some farmers are giving up. There just isn't enough yield to meet demand. For preppers, now is the time to stock up. Buy essential spices like salt, pepper, garlic powder, paprika, and oregano in bulk when on sale. Store them in airtight containers away from heat and light. Most dried spices last for years. If store-bought spices become too rare or expensive, consider growing your own herbs like basil, thyme, or oregano, or using wild plants with natural flavoring properties. Don't wait until it's gone. Start adding spices to your emergency stash today." Number 19, baking essentials, baking powder, baking soda, yeast. When the power's out and grocery stores are closed, store-bought bread won't be an option. That's why having baking essentials like baking powder, baking soda, and yeast is crucial for long-term food prep. But here's what most people don't realize. These everyday items are quietly disappearing from store shelves, and prices are climbing fast. Why? Because baking powder and yeast depend on stable supply chains and specialized manufacturing, both of which are under pressure. In 2023, yeast shortages were reported in parts of the US and Europe due to production delays and rising energy costs. Baking powder has also become harder to find, especially during peak baking seasons. A bakery owner from Ohio said, "We used to get our yeast orders overnight. Now we're waiting weeks and paying twice as much." Prices for these essentials have gone up by over 25% in the last few years. Experts warn that if global supply issues continue, they could become even more scarce or disappear entirely from regular store shelves. For preppers, now is the time to stock up. Buy extra when you see it on sale. Store baking soda in airtight containers. It lasts indefinitely. Baking powder lasts 6 to 12 months unopened, so rotate your supply. Dry yeast can be stored in Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers for long-term use. If traditional baking supplies become unavailable, alternatives like sourdough starters or unleavened flatbreads made with cornmeal or oats may be your best bet. Don't wait until they're gone. Start adding baking essentials to your emergency stash today. Number 20, peanut butter. When it comes to emergency food, peanut butter might not be the first thing that comes to mind, but for good reason. It's calorie-dense, packed with protein, and has a long shelf life. Plus, it's a comfort food that can help maintain morale during stressful times. But here's the surprising truth. Peanut butter is becoming harder to find, and more expensive than ever. Why? Because peanut crops are under pressure from rising temperatures, droughts, and supply chain breakdowns. In 2023, U.S. peanut production dropped by over 10% due to extreme heat and water shortages in key growing regions like Georgia and Texas. At the same time, global shipping delays have slowed the import of peanuts and peanut products. Prices have gone up nearly 30% since 2021, and experts warn they could keep rising if weather conditions don't improve. A peanut farmer from Georgia said, We're getting less from every field. If this keeps up, peanut butter won't just be a luxury, it'll be a rarity. For preppers, now is the time to stock up. Buy natural or store brand peanut butter when on sale. Look for vacuum sealed jars or cans for longer storage. Store in a cool, dry place, or consider powdered peanut butter for extended shelf life. If peanut butter becomes too rare or pricey, alternatives like almond butter, sunflower seed butter, or even canned meats can help replace lost calories and protein. Don't wait until it's gone. Start adding peanut butter to your emergency stash today. Number 21. Dried fruit. When fresh fruit is no longer an option, dried fruit becomes a valuable source of energy, nutrients, and natural sweetness. Without the need for refrigeration, it's lightweight, stores for years, and requires no cooking. But here's what most people don't realize. Dried fruit supplies are tightening and prices are rising faster than expected. Why? Because climate change is hitting major fruit-growing regions hard. In 2023, California, the top U.S. producer of dried fruits like raisins, apricots, and prunes, faced one of its driest years on record. Water shortages forced farmers to reduce orchard sizes, and extreme heat damaged crops before they could be harvested. At the same time, processing and packaging costs have gone up, making dried fruit even more expensive. Store-bought bags have risen by over 25% since 2021, and experts warn that if droughts continue, real shortages may soon follow. A California raisin grower said, "We used to dry thousands of tons every year. Now we're lucky to get half that. If this keeps going, dried fruit will become a luxury." For preppers, now is the time to stock up. Buy in bulk when possible and look for oxygen-free sealed packages or mylar-lined pouches. Store in a cool, dark place. Properly sealed, dried fruit can last up to 5 to 10 years. If store-bought dried fruit becomes too rare or expensive, consider dehydrating your own apples, bananas, or grapes at home using a food dehydrator or oven drying method. Don't wait until it's gone. Start adding dried fruit to your emergency stash today. Number 22. Nuts. When it comes to emergency food, nuts are one of the most powerful survival items you can stockpile. They're packed with protein, healthy fats, and calories, all in a compact, long-lasting package. But here's what most people don't know. Nut supplies are getting tighter and prices are rising fast. Why? Because climate change is hitting major growing regions hard. California produces over 80% of the world's almonds, and in recent years, extreme droughts and water shortages have slashed harvests. In 2023, almond production dropped by nearly 15%, and walnut yields also fell due to unpredictable weather patterns. At the same time, global shipping delays and rising fuel costs are making it more expensive to get nuts to market. Prices for almonds, walnuts, and peanuts have gone up over 30% since 2021, and experts warned they could keep climbing. A California almond grower said, "We're using the same land but getting less every year. If we don't get enough rain next season, we may not even plant at all." For preppers, now is the time to stock up. Buy raw or roasted nuts in vacuum-sealed bags or mylar pouches with oxygen absorbers. Store them in a cool, dark place. Properly sealed, they can last up to 5 to 10 years. If real nuts become too rare or expensive, look into seeds like sunflower or pumpkin, which offer similar nutrition and store just as well. Don't wait until they're gone. Start adding nuts to your emergency stash today. Number 23. Cooking oil and vegetable shortening. When the grid goes down and you're cooking over a fire or portable stove, having a reliable supply of cooking oil or shortening can make all the difference. These fats are essential for preparing meals, preserving food, and even making soap or emergency candles. But here's what most people don't realize. Supplies of common cooking oils are tightening, and prices are rising fast. Why? Because global production is being hit by extreme weather, supply chain breakdowns, and rising fuel costs. In 2023, droughts in the U.S. Midwest reduced soybean yields, while flooding in parts of South America disrupted palm oil production. At the same time, shipping delays have made it harder to import oils like olive and sunflower from traditional sources. A Louisiana soybean farmer said, "We're getting less per acre than ever before, and with fuel prices still high, it's costing us more just to get the crop out of the field." Since 2021, prices for common cooking oils have gone up by over 35%, and experts warn that if growing conditions don't improve, shortages could become more common. For preppers, now is the time to stock up. Buy shelf-stable oils like coconut oil or hydrogenated vegetable shortening in bulk when possible. Store them in sealed containers away from heat and light. Some oils can last up to 5 years or more when stored properly. If traditional oils become scarce, look into alternatives like lard, tallow, or canned animal fats, which also store well and can be used for cooking or baking. Don't wait until it's gone. Start adding cooking oil and shortening to your emergency stash today. Number 24, coffee and tea. For many people, coffee or tea isn't just a morning ritual. See, it's a necessity. In a crisis, having a supply of caffeine can help with alertness, mood, and even morale. Plus, coffee and tea can have medicinal uses and long-term storage potential. But here's the truth. Supplies are tightening and prices are rising faster than most realize. Why? Because climate change is hitting major growing regions hard. Coffee crops in Central and South America have been affected by rising temperatures and unpredictable rainfall. In 2023, Brazil, the world's top coffee producer, saw one of its worst harvests in years due to frost damage and dry conditions. At the same time, tea production in India and Sri Lanka has dropped because of extreme heat and flooding. A Brazilian coffee grower said, "We used to get 2 solid harvests a year. Now we're lucky to get 1 good crop. If this keeps up, real coffee will be a luxury." Since 2021, prices for both coffee and tea have gone up over 30%. Experts warn that if climate trends continue, shortages could become more common, and what's left may come at a steep price. For preppers, now is the time to stock up. Buy freeze-dried or vacuum-sealed coffee in bulk. Store in Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers for long-term use. For tea, go with sealed pouches or tins of black, green, or herbal varieties. If regular coffee or tea becomes too rare or expensive, consider alternatives like roasted barley, chicory root, or dried herbs for homemade substitutes. Don't wait until it's gone. Start adding coffee and tea to your emergency stash today.